Hey everyone, welcome to Leftist Nerd Reacts, now in HD TV and color. Ooh, double dipping. Welcome, nice to see you. Long story short, I was trying to figure out how to make more content consistently, on time, in a timely manner, and I've just decided to take the bold leap to show myself on cam and record from my wife's office. All the decorations that you see behind me are hers. All the stuff is hers. They're pretty awesome for letting me use the space, so thanks and shout out to them. Which, you know, they were like, why are you even asking me, just use it? So, you know, exactly. But yeah, I'll be recording here for the foreseeable future on a lot more videos, but for right now, let's just jump into MHA 392. So let's just jump right into it with a recap. So the chapter begins with Toga more or less yelling at Ochako and Sue, and then we get a ton of flashback, which I think is really the meat of this chapter, but to be super brief, so we can actually get into the discussion, the dissection, and some of the personal thoughts. Sue and Ochako are fighting Toga. She then has her flashback where we see her parents more or less put her in what sounds like and seems like PG-13 conversion therapy. Her quirk counseling was less about identifying how she might be able to live with her quirk, which is what we would consider something like healthy, or, you know, counseling that's centered around coping, and more counseling that's conversion based. There is a box that Toga has to fit in to function with normal society. It's not about saying, hey Toga, here's your quirk and your compulsions, here are some things that you might be struggling with, and here are coping mechanisms. It's more, no, you have to behave this way. At least that's the way I'm interpreting this chapter. No, you have to behave within the certain confines of what we would deem normal society, right? Normal people don't kiss or suck the way she does, which is something she calls herself out as a kid, and her parents are obviously very aggressively anti, not normal. Super healthy, totally normal, totally fine. This is how we treat mentally ill people in the real world, and look at us, nothing bad ever happens, right? Anyway, Toga has this flashback. We then see this whole swarm of Twice clones. They're licking up blood now. Some of them transform into Jiro and Tsuyu. Jiro's there obviously going like, what the fuck? We get a nightmare panel of Toya. We get a nightmare panel of Toga as Sue. Very creepy. It makes me think very much of Salad Fingers or Momo. Ironically, shout out to MHA. But yeah, she looks really fucking deranged. And then Ochako and Sue are fighting, and they're talking and obviously having this whole thing. And Ochako ends up stabbed in the gut. At least, again, that's the way I interpreted it. I feel like it was a little hard to follow, which, considering how much stuff Horikoshi's drawing on this page, how much stuff he's been drawing in general, these large, epic, like grand landscapes and scenes, I think it's a total like pass by. I think it's totally fine if some stuff isn't super 100% clear, because there's just so much going on. It could also just be me. I try to be very careful when I read, but still, yeah, I had to actually double check to see that's what everyone's interpreting as she got stabbed in the gut. But that's where the chapter ends. We have 13 pages. It's not too much to talk about, not too much as far as actual plot progression, but I do think there is some stuff to get into. So, are there important things to call out here? Yeah, I mean, we have it immediately. Twice calls it out at the end of the chapter. Toga doesn't have a villain name, which seems super obvious. It seems like a really obvious one. Dabi didn't either. You might argue that Dabi is his villain name after Toya is his real name. But I think that's more of an identity thing. I think that's kind of like a nuanced discussion on like, is Dabi him now that he kills, or is Dabi his persona, or is Dabi his name, like his villain name, or is Dabi, like, the line between Dabi and Toya is I think less, like, a little blurry, but not super blurry, versus Toga just seems to still be Toga. Obviously the killing and the running away and everything, there are some stuff in between, but yeah, obvious call out. Toga doesn't have a villain name, never gave herself one. Really interesting. I wonder why, because if we go back to what Best Jeanist told Bakugo, where he said a name is like, if I could be misquoting here, it's been a while, but a name is an aspiration, a name is a goal. When you call yourself All Might, it is something that people cheer towards. It's something people look forward to. It's something you yourself are living up to. Endeavors, right? Like, these are kind of obvious things. So you could take it in one way as if Toga was a hero, and we take Best Jeanist's like kind of mold. She doesn't have anything to live towards. But Toga's not a hero. She's a villain. So it's possible that she is just owning her name. It is her. Whether it's because she's unashamed of her identity, is how I took it as. She's reclaiming her identity. Her identity is unabashedly her. There is no distinction. I think that's an interesting call out. I think another important call out is that the Twice clones are licking blood off the battlefield. It's just making things even worse. Things are crazy. So while Toga may not have the abilities of the people that the clones are looking up, and she obviously can't do the thing like clone Shigaraki and etc. with Twice's ability, like it's not stacking in that way. Her clones still do have her ability. They are her clones of Twice. Like, they're Twice clones of himself. Technically it's just her. She has Twice's power plus her own. So interesting stuff going on here. My personal thoughts on this chapter, I think that it's no shocker that Horikoshi's sick. His author comment this week wasn't super positive. Everyone's been saying very loudly, like, hey, take a break, take a month, take 2 months, take as long as you need to get better. We know his shoulder's been hurting him. We know that he's been ill. And obviously that's really difficult and compounded by the other main series also having breaks. And again, we have a random necessary break that came up out of virtually nowhere for Horikoshi. So, I get it. There's a lot of stuff that seems to be impacting the production of this chapter of this series towards the end. I'm still personally really enjoying it. I think that we've been on a hot streak for a while. I know a lot of people haven't been feeling that. I know a lot of people are pissed at the pacing or the few chapters. I don't really care. I think that, that probably is more of a concern if you're not used to week stuff. There are plenty of series I've read that, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. Everyone's entitled to what they feel about any given series, any given thing. If you don't like it, then you don't have to keep reading it, for sure. But I think all things being fair, at the end of this series, we've seen this with manga, we've seen this with comics, we've seen this with so much work. There is author burnout, things do get tough, and I gotta applaud Horikoshi for pulling through. I do agree with the consensus that he should take a break. He should take a month, 2 months, however long it needs for him to heal, to get back on his feet, to get better. Not so he can have better art or have better writing or whatever, but because I want him to not be so traumatized he can't make more work after this, that he can actually contribute and enjoy the things he loves. He's a fantastic creator. I think he's a fantastic storyteller. I hope he does well for both himself and his family, and so that he can stay in the medium as long as he wants to and not necessarily push himself to that brink. Generally, production wise, I think that's where I stand on that. He should take a break. He should prioritize himself. It's unfortunate that Weekly Shonen Jump and Viz and Shueisha just aren't the mechanisms of progressive labor leading thought that they should be, right? When they generate so much revenue, especially off of the back of Horikoshi, Oda, Geki Akutami, you name it. All of these mangakas, all of these merchandisers, retailers, it's unfortunate. It's sad and fucked up. For the ending overall, I've said this, I've actually recorded a couple chapters before, but the production issues, hence here, is why I haven't posted them, but I'll say what I've been saying there consistently. I'm a fan of the ending so far. I'm a big fan of where this is going. I've been a fan of how Dabi stuff wrapped up. The AFO fight is bananas. I'm a big fan of that. I think they're going to need to pull out all the guns for season 8. I don't think we'll get to it in season 7. Season 7 will probably end with the beginning of this, or the first trump cards really being played by the villains, and then we'll have all of season 8, or at least half, a core. Maybe season 7 is 3 cores, but at least this is at minimum so far, from where season 6 ended, 36 episodes in my mind to get to the end. Who knows? But that's just the way it's pacing, and I'm a fan. I think it's going well. I think the beats are hitting. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going really well. This chapter in particular, you know, there's not too much to talk about. I like that Horikoshi is exploring, you know, so much of the villains have been about mental health, and that's not shocking. So much of the villains origins, so much of their like issues with society, so much of the things that they've been struggling with have been about personal mental health, not fitting in, systemic abuse. Like, really, you could go beat for each one and kind of outline not just familial, systemic failures that led people to here. And I think that's something really amazing that Horikoshi chose to focus on. For Togas specifically, I'm actually really happy that we're getting a therapy perspective, because they talk about court counseling before. We've heard this a lot before, and to see Toga's perspective and to see that her counselor, just like in real life, you know, we talk about therapy as people all the time, like, hey, you should go to therapy, you should take care of yourself, but never the individual therapist, or how systemically therapy may not be a one and done solution, and you need a supportive familial network, you need supportive friends, you need a community around you to embolden the impact that therapy has. And Toga just didn't have that. She didn't have parents that were interested in that change. A lot of it just doesn't seem like it was set up for her to succeed. It was set up for her to fail. And it is sad. I'm glad we're seeing that. I personally felt like one of the most powerful lines in the last few chapters was what Dabi said to Endeavor, or at least what he thought as the fight was wrapping up, right? I'm paraphrasing, but it's more or less like, oh, this is what it's like to have attention, right? Or like, this is what it's like to have care. If it was so easy, why couldn't you have just always done that? It's too late. It's not that easy. And it's true. It's true. It's heartbreaking. It's sad. It's true. For Toga, I hope we get some kind of like, not like encapsulation of her character, but something like that. I think Horikoshi, as an author, really understands these characters and systemic abuse really well. And I hope Toga has an equally powerful line, because she's had so many before. And I think for me, this chapter has a really powerful one where she yells to Ochako and is like, hey, society wasn't made for me. You don't know what it's like. You can't speak to me about this. And she's not wrong. It's sad. This chapter is short. I wish you got more. I'm sure when I reread this again in a year or two, the entire series is probably going to hit super crazy as a volume. As an independent weekly chapter, I think it's alright. I think it's, as an independent weekly chapter, I think it's good. Obviously it's short, but I am happy for what we're getting. And you know, honestly, I'd love to understand from everyone else, what are you guys thinking about the chapter? Did you like it? How are you feeling about the ending overall? How are you feeling about like the ending as this series of story beats and arcs and chapters that are wrapping up? You know, please feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe, Patreon, blah blah blah, all the good things. But yeah, I honestly more am curious about, what are you guys thinking? Because for me, it's interesting to see the Reddit and Twitter discussion, and some of the YouTube space doesn't really highlight what I think it should. So I'm curious, what do MHA fans here in this community that we're building, what are you guys thinking? Did you like the chapter? Did you hate the chapter? Etc. But, you know, I'm going to be here now probably every week, ideally, as long as there's not a break, and talking about a lot more stuff. If there's anything I can leave you with before leaving the video, I am going to say there's going to be another video dropping soon. I'm going to be reading Black Clover and doing that as a book club. More details to follow in that video, but if you're interested in Black Clover, make sure to check that out. And thank you. I look forward to seeing you again. I hope to see you soon.